Hello, and welcome back to Sean's Creative Corner. Today's topic is public versus private. And public versus private can be anything from what we publicly and privately share, emotionally, or ideas or concepts, and how we have a public and a private sector, why we feel that why the use of money in the structure of this thing is a trade-off, or we make trades, trade money for knowledge, money for ideas. Those things can be true, but and also relating to computer engineering and computer science, a public and a private variable. So, since this is a game and dev and design channel, I want to relate this first from the point of view of a coder. In our class structures, when we code, we have public and private variables, or we have public and private classes, or interfaces, meaning that in an object-oriented world, or an object-oriented program, we share information publicly and privately, and they have distinct and specific purposes. There are also things called static variables, but just relating the public and private sense can help maybe the computer technical mind understand something even more related to society and the social world or the business world. And we with all these different human idioms and subjects and topics, and we can share things publicly and privately between them, just like object-oriented programming. And it's important to have both a public life and a private life, but there's kind of that balance, that unique balance. I believe that we need both, because they exist for specific reasons. But I also believe that both things that we do publicly or not, or we hold back privately, can also easily define and get criticized for not sharing. We sometimes we privatize certain things that should be open, and this is gets in. We obviously have unique and different worldviews as to why and what we should make public and what we should make private. But when it comes to starting a business, I think it's important that we do have a degree of transparency, or public. We publicize our mistakes, we publicize our failures, we publicize our mental faculties of how we came from point A to point B. It helps others discern maybe where we can do better in certain things and how to solve certain problems. And at the same time, you may feel that, well, I want to keep these things private and I don't want to make them public, because then I'm giving away some sort of knowledge or truth, and therefore I'm not getting anything in return. I'm being used, or I'm being I'm being used, or it could be abusive if there isn't a fair trade between these two concepts. And I think that's where a lot of the big business and small business mentality come into. Hoping that small businesses, there's the level of human competition and success. People are competitive in nature, and we do compete. And if you don't compete, or you allow other groups or other things to dominate one or the other two things. In nature, we live in a state of constant balance with these two topics I'm talking about. Um, but what I know, and coming and instead of making it more about what I see or feel about other people or other organizations, I'm going to talk about my organization and my opinion on how to go about using public and privacy to your advantage. And you know, here I am in a private space um, that I only allow certain, you don't allow certain people into certain private spaces into your life um, for whatever reason that may be. And but I'm taking a private space and I'm trying to make it public here to show a sense of transparency, of honesty and truth, of how difficult and how hard certain things are to explain. Um, and trying to be consistent and keep this content related to game dev and design, but also explaining a bigger, more profound concept um, that that can be viewed from this global or universal standpoint, or even this meta universe that we live in with technology. And I'm not trying to sound smart or intelligent. I'm trying to expose a degree of my private life publicly, um, more so than I know some other people do, and I guess I do that on some sort of it could be an activist mindset, meaning that you're just trying to um, maybe explore or explain a certain human emotion or human facet, and I'm willing to take the criticism, and I'm willing to take the risk, because because you know because of the risk, I feel there is a degree of reward with the risk you take, but there's also a degree of balance, and knowing when to pull back, or when to maybe apologize for being lewd or crude, or maybe in my case trying not to be verbally violent, because anger is a true emotion that we have. Resentment and anger, or guilt or shame, those things that, but we don't want to live in those worlds, because if we live in those worlds, they will control you, it will eat you. And you want to get to a state of balance and joy and flow and peace, because if you can live in that meditative state of flow and peace and communication, and discerning how to maybe take public knowledge or private knowledge, and then um, actually communicate the difference, and that paradigm is important. And I feel like I'm getting off topic, and I get into this philosophical mode of trying to explain this, and now I'm trying to root it back and trying to be content relative, and relating this to public and private variables, and public and private spaces, and public and private video content here. But I'm just kind of trying to maybe enlighten the new business owner how important this concept really is, because if you just put out a quantity of public videos, and then that randomness, and you're not thinking about maybe privatizing some of that stuff and selling that content, and selling a degree, you could get used in the internet, just like a lot of small businesses do. They spend a lot of time and energy not quantifying the quality to where they promote a sense of sustainable wealth for themselves. And I've done it to myself, like because of uh, a less of desire for money. There's been times I've loved money, other times that I've hated money, and there's times that it's been a mute point because it's like a way of exchange. But there's many ways that money has transferred into a digital crypto world, and you could trade service for another service. You could trade um, service for a product. There's so many ways that we can trade, like, and exchange information for an object, and this it's this different way of thinking, and so I tend to try to get away from words like hate or anger and stuff like that because they're ugly. They're part of the human condition that that don't make somebody usually attractive, but yet they also do attract a certain degree of truth, because without anger and honesty and ambition and passion or masculinity, just certain words that can get demonized, and I don't want us to be demonizing some of these things when they also have a purpose and a place in our own public and private businesses, and our and art, and all of those things are just an amazingly important concept to balance in your life, because if you're too public about things or too private about things, people won't, like, if you're too private, people won't understand or know, and they won't buy into it at all, and you'll, if that's the goal, you're welcome to be extremely private your whole life and do things in that realm. But if you never step out into the public light, you'll never understand the truth of what a large group of people understand and know also. So it's just that balance. It's that balance beam of life that you have to kind of juggle. And sometimes making amends or apologizing for something that was said or something that was did is important to move forward. But sometimes you don't get that either. Sometimes people are stubborn in their ideologies and idioms so much that they're never going to change, and that's fine also. It's just more of recognizing the reality of that, maybe from the opposite perspective from time to time, and there's just those unique human emotions that I'm trying to discern in this topic that I'm talking about. And maybe I'm getting a little too philosophical and less relatable. Maybe I will bring this topic back when we start talking about game development and coding, and you maybe understand what I mean by it on a more finite level, opposed to this infinite philosophical topic that I've kind of wandered into. But that is the point of this getting started YouTube stuff. I'm being open and raw, and I'm not trying to read off a script here. I'm trying to read, to come from my mind. I'm coming from my heart, and I'm trying to bring a sense of it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to recognize those mistakes and reconcile with them, because that's the point of growth. Like, we need to grow, and communication is the whether it's through art or music or just a one-on-one voice conversation, is so true communication is even more important. Like, here I'm privatizing myself and I'm sending this out publicly to anyone or anything out there, but it's not the same as like having a conversation and having several people. And I think I'm going to do that at some point. I will bring in certain people who are helping develop or have done some of the initial ideas for the game stuff, or even helped me in business, or even some of the musical band friends or family and friends, just to bring this into a more balanced of public and private. And it will maybe because a lonely life, being alone is I think is a huge factor. I think we have lonely, uh, a sense of loneliness and depression that we can go to when we don't share our thoughts and feelings. But I feel like I'm an overshare and an overabundant. I can be a little bit. Maybe it's because I was born a Cancer, or maybe it was poor. Maybe just because it's in my nature. Um, but or I live the emo style life. But I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with this. I think that we need to recognize that there are other ways and unique um, ways of expressing and doing these things, and having that sense of tolerance and acceptance is important. And it's okay to also have a difference of opinions and political views in the process, um, that we do and don't share. But um, the other thing is, by just taking this private thing, this concept, and trying to get down to the heart or the root of the matter and publicize it, doesn't even mean that it's going to be viewed. So it's just like, not like you have to go tell everybody that I'm making this or doing this. It's okay. Like, if people find your thing or they find it sometime, that's great too. Like, not everything has to have a purpose or a meaning. It could just be nonsensical meaninglessness that you're trying to portray within a piece of art or a video game or a song or a lyric or something like that, or poetry or something like that. It's just it's hard not to it's hard when I see surface level people. Everybody has a deep well to them. When they say something that is surface level about someone else or somebody else's art or somebody else's business, and you don't realize how much of an impact that might have if somebody finds that, and it's hard. It's hard to discern with all the different um, societies and cultures and religions and idioms and political views and all those things. It's like you're bound to offend somebody by being successful. So it's okay to have a point of view. You have to be a little bit more bold and risky and being like, no, this is how I feel at the time. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm going about it. This is what I did in the process. And then if you can prove me wrong, or you can prove that this doesn't work, that's on you, kind of thing. So hopefully that's just an eye-opening topic that we can discuss. Feel free to leave comments and lead me into, or criticisms and comments are welcomed. I'm gonna try to just move forward and not read into my own work for too long or anything, because it's easy to get self-critical and all that stuff while doing this, especially at first, and then you kind of get into a flow, and eventually I think it becomes like an hour I set aside when I have a topic or idea, and I sit here and I make a little video podcast, and some things will stick and some things won't. Some things will be memorable and some things won't, and that's just the reality of it, because there's so much out there, and everybody's doing what they can. So all right, God bless you and have a good day.